Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Okay, guys, I'm really loving what Chris, Wayne, Steiger, and this physicist friend of ours. He's the information he's gathering and putting together, and the explanations he's giving are pretty um, compelling and really well thought through, mashallah. So I'm going to continue on that thread, mashallah, whilst the information is available to us. Alhamdulillah, the physicist is really getting involved and getting his colleagues involved as well in this phenomena and all the effects of the phenomena, and we're going into it in detail with regards to physics and trying to explain what better scientifically what's happening. Anyway, I'll let him continue. You can listen. This is, by the way, it's about the axis and the spin and the rotation of the Earth, as well as our magnetic fields.
Answer to R. Wayne Steiger regarding change in Earth's rotational speed, spin axis, and temperature due to plasma discharges. This is what R. Wayne Steiger previously wrote. The response is from my physicist friend. Been talking to a friend of mine who works in the aerospace industry, and he told me that the software engineers who have to write the programs to guide everything from rockets to satellites are having to work overtime to compensate for, and I quote, "The Earth's rotation has been altered in several ways, both speed and inclination. Now the question is why." We discussed my hypotheses that magnetic fields would disrupt if there was any other mass in the general neighborhood, so to speak, and we could track any disruption by conflicting magnetic forces, either by complete cutting off of our Earth's magnetic signature and connection to our stars' planets, or through the disruption of magnetic flow of the Earth, both internal core and external outflow. And if such an object or objects did exist, and if they were of significant mass, and if strong enough, it could be impacting both rotational speed and tilt. He says we have missed a key clue by the plasma reaction recorded off the ISS. I have attached a picture showing what he's talking about. He says plasma on a celestial scale is a result of serious magnetism reaction of two or more bodies in the general same area of space. He says that another clue in the way we measure plasma output, which is tied oddly enough, to magnetism. He also pointed out that I am generally correct that this kind of plasma is also very hot and would most likely be having a negative reaction to Earth's atmosphere, such as depending where this event is taking place, there is a very high possibility we would see these impacts in our upper jet stream, increases in overall moisture in localized areas, and possibly ocean temps as well. Excuse me. Now this is very interesting, and here's some of my thoughts on this topic. The Earth was most certainly tilted, which is why the sun does not come up where it used to anymore. This is to be expected if one or more very massive objects, stars, have entered the solar system. I explain this below without getting too technical. Number 2. The changed rotational speed is also to be expected if one or more very massive bodies are in very close proximity of our sun. But the change in the orbital speed would cause problems with the geosynchronous satellites because they would then not keep pace with the position above which they are supposed to be stationed. As to fooling the public that the day is still 24 hours long, that is easy. You just make each second a little shorter or longer and let everyone's clock reset to the new definition of a second. It's all done electronically anyway, so it's easy to do that. Days would be shorter and so not as much would get done in each day, but it would seem to be just as long as before because there would still be 24 hours in a day. So people would just hurry more in order to get everything done. The length of a year would change, though, but it would probably be noticeable after a few years. Point 3.
Now, subhanAllah, isn't that theory interesting? Because the Prophet ﷺ said the days would be shorter. I mean, this could potentially lend into that, at least to some extent. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best.
Plasma discharges to be expected with planets coming close to the Earth, and we know that there are quite a few. We have seen a huge discharge coming off of Venus, so they must be coming off of Earth as well. We have seen pictures of column of light in the atmosphere and plasma discharge behind the sun simulation device. So there is evidence that this is happening. They're just trying to hide that from us. And of course, a plasma discharge implies a heating up of the atmosphere, as molecules in the atmosphere in the vicinity of the discharge will heat up. I also think that the increased electromagnetic radiation from the additional stars in the vicinity will also be absorbed into the Earth's interior and heat up the magma inside the Earth. This would cause an increase in volcanic activity and earthquake activity. The increase in volcanic eruptions, the increase in volcanic eruptions on the ocean floor would heat up the oceans from the bottom and cause changed water currents and weather patterns. Eventually, the air currents jet stream would be affected as well.
Okay, all of these we've already not only hypothesized, but we said would increase, and it can be found in the PDF that was uploaded early Ramadan, called Signs. And in that, the hypothesis was that this celestial body, a star, a binary system, has entered our solar system, and that particular star is impacting Earth, its atmosphere, as well as the Earth at the core. Hence the magma, the flow of the magma around the core of the Earth getting disturbed, causing these the tectonic plates to move and shift, and the liquefaction of land. And the liquefaction more specifically refers to the landslides. And again, then there's the landslides and the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ about the three major landslides. That would happen in the east, the west, and the Arabian Peninsula. Again, the atmosphere has changed as well. When we're told about the natural disasters, we're seeing that anyway. Although they're localizing the problem to climate change and that caused by pollution, all of this is, again, house of mirrors, cloak and dagger technique to keep our, gazes away from the skies and finding out what the real problem is. Because once we do find out the real problem, then we'll be in a better position as an ummah, if this is indeed the hypothesis is correct, that we have got a star that's entered our solar system, and that's what's causing all these natural disasters, and that these disasters will incrementally get more extreme, and then to the point where we're at our closest proximity to this star and its celestial bodies, is when we'll see the greatest natural disasters being spoken of in hadith. And they don't want us to be in a position where we have contingencies, or we prepare, and there's some level of damage limitations done by the Ummah, simply because the less of us there is, the easier we are to manage, the less of us expect this disaster, this impending disaster, the larger the trauma to our psychology, our psyche, and the more, susceptible the Ummah becomes to influence and coercion. And they've got a lot of other plans if, as and when this happens, but I won't elucidate on that. I guess time in and of itself will reveal the truth of that, rather than me having forecasted what will happen. It will happen as it's written to happen, and the Ummah will see it happen if it is indeed written. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows best. I'll let him continue.
Point 4. Magnetic fields. Yes, everything actually seems to be about magnetic fields. I think the ideas behind the strong and gravitational forces can all be understood in terms of magnetic fields. At least, that is what primer fields seem to lead to. We can still use the mathematical model of the gravitational force to work out trajectories and so on, but to understand what causes the gravitational attraction between bodies, we would have to look deeper into the magnetic fields. The change in the Earth's rotational speed and orientation of spin rotational axis can be easily understood when we take into account the Sun's motion with respect to the galaxy. then the Earth's motion is not circular around the Sun, but a spiral, because it has both velocity along the direction of motion of the Sun and tangential velocity, which is velocity due to circular motion. Figure 1 below illustrates this. I apologize for not pronunciating it absolutely perfect and correct. Figure 1. If we take into account the Earth's motion with respect to the center of our galaxy, Earth's real motion through space is a spiral. Thus, the Earth's motion in 2 dimensions looks sinusoidal. Wow! As figure 2 below shows. Earth's trajectory, Sun's trajectory. Oh, okay. Thank you. Oh, that's fantastic. Figure 2. Earth's motion with the Sun's motion through the galaxy when taken into account in 2 dimensions. Now, from figure 2, we can see that the distance between the Earth and the Sun changes. Also, the Earth's speed is no longer constant. Although the Earth's angular momentum will now have a new term in it, these 3 changes lead to a non-zero torque. There is a torque, i.e., a rotational effect caused by a force. There is a spin or rotation about an axis. This is why the Earth spins or rotates about an axis and at a certain rotational speed. Now, it turns out that both the spin axis and the rotational speed are dependent on the central attractive force between the Earth and the Sun. In particular, the spin axis has a certain fixed orientation in relation to the direction of the central force. Figure 3 below shows the relative orientation of the Earth's spin axis and the central force of Sun when the massive object in the solar system is a single star, the Sun. Sun, F Sun, direction of central force towards Sun, spin axis, and Earth. Figure 3. Direction of central force and orientation of spin axis for planet Earth when there is only one very massive central object, the Sun, in the solar system. However, if another massive object of a mass comparable to that of the Sun, such as another star, enters our solar system, the Earth will feel a secondary gravitational attraction towards the star, and so the result is the central force, Fr, will change. This will cause the Earth's spin axis orientation and rotational speed to change. This is illustrated in figure 4 below. Sun, rogue star, F Sun, Fr, resultant central force. And again, F Sun, Earth's spin axis and central force, which is here, old spin axis, new spin axis. Here is Earth, F star. Figure 4.
Sorry to interrupt again and interject, guys. I just thought I'd mention something. SubhanAllah, most of you are aware, alhamdulillah, that Islam, Muslims, the Persians, the Arabs in particular, had brought a lot of sciences to the West. We understand that to be the golden age of Renaissance, and we contributed considerably to many sciences, one of which was astronomy, the science of astronomy. SubhanAllah, we used to have a very, very firm grip on astronomy. Sadly, unfortunately, it's a knowledge that has slipped out of the hands of the Ummah considerably, and it plays a huge role. In fact, you'll find today, at least, the contemporary scholars actually, I mean, they go as far. There's a little quote that comes to mind, that millionaires don't study the skies, billionaires do, and billionaires aren't brilliant businessmen, they're just intelligent men. And you can understand why these billionaires do actually study the skies and spend copious amounts of time studying traditional literature, ancient literature, have a love for history as well as historical artifacts, are collectors of these sort of things, because there's so many truths to it, subhanAllah. And Islam, ajib, the amount of knowledge that we have brought, subhanallah. And sadly, it slipped our hands simply because we've obviously realigned, well, not realigned, moved away from our deen and aligned ourselves with the secular world and everything that's been spoon-fed to us by the system. Unfortunately, we've left the true knowledge and the real knowledge. And the knowledge that we have today is the knowledge that they have dispensed to us. So in other words, they've cherry-picked what we should learn, what we shouldn't learn, how we basically can be plugged into the system and contribute to the system without us becoming a liability to any one of them. We need to start looking outside the box and thinking outside the box, and certainly the skies is one of the places that we should be focusing on. Ulama, subhanallah, really, mashallah, we have very few who do study astronomy, but it's really important, and the sciences, because astrophysics is a very important piece of knowledge, and certainly worthwhile studying. We don't get encouraged to study these sort of things. Generally, what we produce are engineers, dentists, doctors. If we do push the boat out, then it's brain surgeons. Subhanallah, I guess the best and the most, the only fun I guess I can basically focus on that we excel in and excel the whole ummah in, subhanallah, is the tazkiyah of the heart. And subhanallah, that's one fun that we've excelled everyone, well, at least we focus on. Subhanallah, alhamdulillah, alhamdulillah, thumma alhamdulillah, that we do. But one needs to basically, there's other at least secular pieces of knowledge that we need to really give some sort of credence to, and maybe encourage our, mashallah, the new generation about, and guide them towards it. Subhanallah, to see the qudrat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, look to the heavens. Subhanallah, the night and day is there for us to reflect on the greatness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and how it alternates. Ajib, so subhanallah, it's the sky has a lot of knowledge in it. And this is why, one of the many reasons, I guess, why the Muslim Ummah is lagging so far behind, simply because we're actually trailing and following the shadows that the West is casting, as opposed to becoming the leaders and leading trends and education.
Illustration of how the resultant central force exerted on planet Earth would change if another star enters our solar system, with a resulting change in the spin axis orientation, which is the effect that is exaggerated in order to better illustrate this concept. In summary, this should also result in the Earth's orbital plane to change. So if we go back to the view of the Sun being stationary in space and the Earth orbiting it in a circular orbit, Earth would no longer orbit in the ecliptic plane, but in the plane of the central resultant force, Fr, because of the influence of the star below the Sun. So the Earth would seem to dip a little below the ecliptic on one side of its orbit and a little above on the opposite side.